people that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
You're not going to get the Tiger Woods size audience. Because do you know where they went? They went to Caitlin Clark. That's where those people went.
What?
Those people are now going to the WNBA. Yeah. The fan that only watches what's hot, the fan, the casual who doesn't really like sports but likes to be involved in the in thing, they're watching
cooler discussion.
They're watching Caitlin Clark.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
I mean, they're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Hour number 3 officially underway right now. Got a lot more guests, a lot more hot topics to go over. It's Davis and Donnie on a Wednesday morning right here on the SportsGrid Network, Sirius XM channel 159. Davis, how are we feeling? A lot of topics down, a lot of topics to go. 2 hours down, 1 hour to go. Is the energy going to be there in the 10 o'clock hour here on the East Coast for you? Is it going to be there?
I'm locked in. We haven't even gotten to talking about tonight's doubleheader in the NBA. Like, it's beautiful. The Avalanche win last night. We have rumors now that Jaden Daniels might even not be one of the first 3 quarterbacks selected. Wow. We just got a new article from The Athletic that just came out while we were doing that segment with our buddy Mark Zinno there. And I mean, look, man, it's chaos. This is beautiful for me. To me, any year that the Chiefs are not in the Super Bowl, the NFL draft is honestly the first round is my favorite night of the calendar.
Going to be sensational. Why? Yesterday we had Phil Simms talking about quarterbacks in the NFL draft. Today, Boomer Esiason joins us here in hour number 3 to evaluate some of the quarterbacks in the draft. And also Craig Mitch going to talk some Major League Baseball with us coming up. But of course, during this segment, what do we like to do? Reach out to the public. The Fade the Public poll at SportsGrid and at SportsGrid TV on X, at Davis Maddock, at Right Side VP. Everybody's in the mix. Well over 100 votes here. The question today, Davis, was what is the best bet for tonight's NBA playoff games? Now, we have a doubleheader tonight. Sometimes we're used to quadruple headers. Sometimes we're used to triple headers here. But tonight, back-to-back basketball games. And quite frankly, maybe we could be seeing 2 blowouts, but that's not the case here that we want to ask you. We want to ask which is the best bet tonight, which does include the point spread. Very simple, 4 options here. The Celtics, minus 14.5. The Miami Heat, plus 14.5. The Thunder, minus 7.5. Or the Pelicans at plus 7.5. Before I get to the percentages here, Davis, I went with the Pelicans at plus 7.5 tonight as my pick. Which way did you vote today? See that? I knew you. I mean,
come on. There's only one pick here. It's definitely not the Heat plus 14.5. I promise you, Heat plus 14.5. Fake a sharp bet on the board. Like your friend who's like, I don't bet teams. I bet numbers. Your friend who said that in your group chat, that's the guy who's betting on the Miami Heat tonight. And that same friend is going to be begging begging for Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to be benched in the fourth quarter. And he's going to be like, can we get O'Shea Brissett in here to miss some 10th? Yeah, I mean, I promise you, like, maybe Heat plus 14.5 wins. You know, I'm not a soothsayer, but I'm telling you that your fake sharp friend is betting Heat plus 14.5. Easily best bet on the board. Thunder minus 7.5. They got their shaky knees game out of the way in game one. Shea, now to be fair, Shea did have a tough time with Herb Jones Jr., but guess what? If Herb Jones Jr. is there on Shea, that means someone who is not a good defender is going to be on Jalen Williams, right? That either means Brandon Ingram, Trey Murphy, or CJ McCollum is going to have to be out there on him. Still no Zion, right? Zion is not going to be, I mean, if the Pelicans somehow win this series, maybe he'll be able to come back. The Thunder, in the regular season, the Thunder were the second best team in the NBA. They were better than the Nuggets. Now, are they better than the Nuggets as a team? No, they definitely are not the case. But the Oklahoma City Thunder are a really good team. The Pelicans are missing their best player. Come on, man. Don't get skewed by game one. Thunder minus 7.5, best bet on the board.
And how about this? If you're looking to fade the public, that is exactly what Davis Maddock is doing. Why? Because only 18.6% of the vote are coming in on the Thunder. That's last place here. And as Davis pointed out, betting on the number, not on the teams here. A playoff team getting 2 touchdowns. Where do I sign up? That's 31.4%, which means the public is signing up on the Miami Heat, taking the 14.5, as followed by the Celtics at 28.4% to cover the minus 14.5. And then the Thunder, 18.6% as we went over. And then the Pelicans, who I voted for, 21.6. We'll find out who wins, who loses a little bit later tonight. Now, in life, sometimes there are winners and losers. If you go back 20 or so years, USC was on top of the world with Pete Carroll, Reggie Bush, Lendale White, Matt Leinart winning championships, going back to back. But some things transpired over that winning cause, which meant Reggie Bush, the Heisman Trophy winner, lost his Heisman Trophy. Why? Because he accepted impermissible benefits here from boosters and or agents. It's the only cardinal sin they have in college athletics. Just don't sign with an agent. Just don't take money from boosters, and you will be okay. Reggie Bush did not do that. He lost his Heisman, but today somehow gets it back. And the quote here for why he got it back is, Reggie Bush's reinstatement comes from the Heisman Trophy Trust, calling it in enormous changes in the college football landscape. I don't understand why he got it back. He broke the cardinal sin in college football, and now he gets it back, Davis. Your thoughts on Reggie Bush? Do you agree with him getting it back? Do you disagree, or what's the deal here?
Of course I agree with him getting it back. I mean, I just think the idea of trying to pretend that college football has not always been corrupt is insane. College football has always been corrupt. And Reggie Bush was such a deserving Heisman Trophy winner, 2,300 yards, 18 touchdowns, was also the best kicker and punt returner in the country. I mean, college Reggie Bush, Donnie, for the kids who don't know, college Reggie Bush was a sight to see. I don't think you can tell the story of mid-2000s college football without Reggie Bush's 2004-2005 seasons at USC. It was come on. How can you not want Reggie Bush to have his Heisman Trophy?
It's not that good. And again, Reggie Bush was awesome. He was must-see TV, unbelievable athlete. Those USC teams were so much fun to watch. I do get that here. But you broke the only rule you couldn't break. And yes, other people were breaking those rules. Of course they are. Same thing as we do in society. But those players were never caught here. I always joke like Matt Leinart, Lendale White should never talk to Reggie Bush again because they took a championship away and validated a lot of those records from when those guys had actually played. He didn't need to do that. He could have waited at this point. But the fact of the matter that he took that money and got caught, I don't have an issue because even if the landscape does change, what does that mean for back in the day? Now, here's point number 2. And again, maybe I'm a little bit older in my 40s. The younger generation loves it. No big deal. And maybe the younger generation is okay with slipping around some of these rules. I don't understand why you would be able to break this rule and get the Heisman Trophy back. But look at today's day and age. And I say this in all sincerity. To be honest, you should be cheating in every aspect of your life because apparently it does pay. Michigan had teammates / coaches on sidelines stealing signals. Cardinal rule number 1, you can't do this. You know what happened to Michigan? They won a national championship and nothing happened. And nothing is going to happen to them in the future. So I look at evidence of those situations and say to myself, why don't you just cheat at every single turn? We watched college basketball just a few short years ago with wiretaps from the FBI that had coaches admitting to paying players and nothing happened. Will Wade at LSU was about to be fired. He told LSU, you're not firing me for this. I'm still going to coach. So from my aspect now, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And even if you do cheat, in the end, it'll still, Davis, work out in your favor.
If you're not cheating, you are not trying. I mean, it's really that simple. If you are the only one not cheating, Donnie, guess what? You're just going to lose, and no one's going to feel bad for you, because everyone in college athletics, really, I suppose cheating is just so much more prominent in college athletics because there is this veneer of amateurism that everyone knows is not true. Like, if you're going to make college football big business, if you're going to make college basketball big business and then expect people not to cheat, you are the idiot. The cheaters are not the idiots. The people who have the expectation of no cheating are the idiots. So good on SMU for cheating back in the day. Good on Reggie Bush. Good on, I don't know, whatever Alabama has done to do their yes. People in college athletics are going to cheat. It's the reality of the situation. Super pro NIL. Let the money be above board. You're going to keep people safe, right? Don't put people in ethically dodgy situations. Put the money above board. Everyone cheats.
I believe it was when I was growing up, G.I. Joe, a famous cartoon. I believe they always said that cheaters never win, like the end of those episodes there. That was all wrong growing up. I should have cheated on every test I had all growing through life here. I just should have done that. I might have even been in a better place at this point here with maybe more money in my pocket. So, general equation here, guys. Whatever you did in the past, if you cheated, just wait a couple years. It's going to come back to you in spades as being a net positive for you in your life. How about that? Lessons learned, kids. Cheaters do win. Remember that. Absolutely. We got so much more to go in the show here. Craig Mish coming up next. Major League Baseball. Boomer Esiason. This is the place to be right here on the SportsGrid Network.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
You're not going to get the Tiger Woods size audience. Because do you know where they went? They went to Caitlin Clark. That's where those people went.
What?
Those people are now going to the WNBA. Yeah. The fan that only watches what's hot, the casual who doesn't really like sports but likes to be involved in the in thing, they're watching
cooler discussion.
They're watching Caitlin Clark.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
I mean, they're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Oh, hour number 3, that energy is here. We're ready to go. Great guests, great content as we get away. It's Donnie Right Side. It's Davis Maddock. And now we take a look at our MLB insider, the resident here at the SportsGrid Network. It's Craig Mish. Craig, how are we feeling on this Wednesday morning?
Did you just open up the segment with, oh, that's not a good sign.
Yeah, it's a great sign. We're energized. We're ready to go. The orange juice is flowing. The coffee is through the veins. And we need to talk some Major League Baseball at this point now. And we're going to start with the Philadelphia Phillies and the Cincinnati Reds. Yesterday, we saw the Phillies, the 7-game win streak, the longest in baseball, snapped in half with an 8-1 victory by the Cincinnati Reds. Now, they'll get back after it today. You can't win every game in baseball. Number one, how we feel about the Philadelphia Phillies actually having a winning record in April. Number two, the chances that they bounce back today, Craig.
Yeah, look, the Phillies have to really be commended for having a different approach, whatever that may be in April, and not letting the division slip away early in the season. And look, Sanchez, the pitcher for Philadelphia, pitched great all season long. So, really, eventually this is going to come back to the mean, or the median, as they would say in baseball. I think today's sort of like a coin flip game here today. When these two teams face off, the offenses are usually on track to score some runs. I see a total of 8.5 here. So I would lean a little towards some runs being scored, certainly. And obviously Bryce Harper on the paternity list will be back soon for Philadelphia, Donnie. And they've won without him last year a little bit. They win without him this year too.
Yep.
So naturally, I think the Phillies are better than the Reds, but one game scenario in late April is sort of hard to handicap.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's that's where I'm kind of at with a lot of these teams right now. Is I like what's going on with the Astros? Like, had the Pirates have a winning record? The Brewers can't be beaten. The Dodgers are like 500. There's a lot of baseball left to be played. We are going to talk about the National League pennant odds that still do have the Dodgers all the way there up at the top. But before we get there, I actually just want to ask you, I'm going rogue here with Friezo. I want to ask you about the St. Louis Cardinals, quote unquote, best fans, baseball, model organization. Craig, I'm here, boots on the ground in St. Louis. No one cares about the Cardinals right now. People are bummed out about the Cardinals. They can't hit. The strength of their organization for like the last 15 years is we'll take any pitcher. We're going to turn him into a 3.89 ERA guy who gets ground balls 47% of the time. They're not doing that anymore. What is the deal with the St. Louis Cardinals?
Yeah, very strange offseason, I thought, for them, Davis. At the time, signing the players that they did, no offense to Sonny Gray or Lance Lynn or any of the pitchers they brought in. But this day and age, we're really in a swing and miss society, and they really didn't capitalize on that this offseason. They chose, as you said, to get ground balls, try to play defense, and assume that their offense would be more or less what it was last year. That has not been the case. I also have to tell you, Davis, going back to spring training, I mean, this was the first spring training in a while in Jupiter where I did not see as many Cardinals fans flocking to the spring like they normally do, and they always are there in the spring. And certainly coming from the better weather in the Midwest, I didn't see that this year. So I thought that was a sign of apathy a little bit, and kind of like, here we go again. And then, the offseason, I mean, you'll have to explain this one to me, but it was not a great year for them last year. So they rewarded their manager with a 2-year contract extension. Look, I'm not positive as to what's going on there. They did bring in Chaim Bloom from the Red Sox to sort of be, somebody there, some checks and balances, I guess. And I would have to think that some major shakeup could potentially be coming for the Cardinals if they don't finish 500 or above. I mean, for them to be 3-4 games under 500 at any point during the season is an unacceptable scenario for them. And I know that some of the players on offense have gotten off to poor starts. What we do know about the Cardinals, Davis, is at some point this year, they're going to win like 10 out of 11. They always get hot at some point during the year. But coming off last year, looking at this year, looks like the same team.
Baseball heaven in St. Louis, certainly not heavenly right now, but if we do take a look at that National League pennant race, the Cardinals actually are 17-1 price, tied with the Chicago Cubs, which is good for fourth best in the NL. Those top three teams sort of on that shelf here, Craig. Dodgers plus 165, Atlanta Braves plus 220, and then the Philadelphia Phillies at a 7-1 price. Is it just those three teams we're looking at, Craig, or anybody else behind them? Teams like the Arizona Diamondbacks that caught lightning in a bottle last year, right through to the World Series at an 18-1 price. Any value in the National League outside of the top three guys?
Yeah, still like Arizona. I think they're in it. I think that when you look at the Cubs, they haven't been in a position in a long time to really make a deep run. Last year, they fell apart, fired their manager. Now they have Craig Counsell there. I would think, financially speaking, they would be able to do whatever they wanted to if they chose to at the trade deadline or somewhere along those lines. So for me, the Cubs would be that team, but they're more of a public team, though, guys. It's really hard to get any value on their odds because so many people who don't even follow baseball are just Cubs fans. They know about the Cubs. They bet on the Cubs as well. But you could see them being there. So for me, it is still the big three, as you see there: Dodgers, Braves, Phillies. But last year we would have said that, not knowing the Diamondbacks were going to make that epic run. So we can't discount them, and I have the Cubs there as well.
That seems fine. I think the interesting thing is that the market has not responded to the fact that the Braves pitching is in a pretty tenuous spot. Spencer Strider was their best pitcher, out for the year. The remaining two best pitchers, Max Fried, has not been good this season. And to me, I think the market is not pricing in the fact that if Fried doesn't become a very strong, Cy Young-ish style guy, what's going to happen if Chris Sale gets injured? We're going down to like the guy who would have been their 9th potential starter in spring training. Do you think the Braves are a little bit overvalued in this market right now, or are they just the Braves?
No, I think they are what they are. Look, I don't know that Reynaldo Lopez, who pitches today, is going to continue, but he's been maybe their best pitcher, Davis, to start the season. And maybe they found something with him, whether it was the offseason or spring training, but he's been fantastic. I know it was the Marlins last night. But Max Fried pitched his best game of the season. So maybe he is getting right, so to speak, for the Braves as well. This is just not a team that I worry about during the regular season, Davis. It's more of the postseason. And I do think at some point they have to recognize that just making these minor moves at the deadline may not be enough. So I would expect the Braves in a few months to get better and better. I can't believe we're doing the deadline here in April, but it's sort of the have and the have-nots of baseball, I guess.
We're trying to find pitchers for the Atlanta Braves. If there's one organization out there, no doubt about it, it's the Atlanta Braves that will do the right thing, and it usually works out in their favor with some of the moves that they do make. A large Major League Baseball card across the landscape today. First pitch at 1:15 Arizona in St. Louis, and then we travel all the way down to 8:40 p.m. tonight. That is San Diego, and it's Colorado. Action-packed stuff here, but you know what? Craig Mish always keeps us in the know as being our resident MLB insider, and you can find him at 11 a.m. Newswire coming up shortly here. Make sure you tune into that show and all the other great things we have going on the SportsGrid Network. Craig, thanks for joining us this morning. We'll see you soon.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
You're not going to get the Tiger Woods size audience. Because do you know where they went? They went to Caitlin Clark. That's where those people went.
What?
Those people are now going to the WNBA. Yeah. The fan that only watches what's hot, the fan, the casual who doesn't really like sports but likes to be involved in the in thing, they're watching
cooler discussion.
They're watching Caitlin Clark.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
I mean, they're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Major League Baseball on the mind. We got you covered in this segment right here. A full slate of games here. So we were just talking with Craig Mish. First game on tap 1:15. Last game on tap 8:40. All the way through action, and more action. It's Esiason and Donnie here on a Wednesday morning to break down some of the Major League Baseball card, which does include Cincinnati today. Spencer Turnbull has been very good for the Philadelphia Phillies. They're saying once they get healthy in that starting lineup, which means Taijuan Walker comes back, Turnbull's probably going to go into the bullpen. Lodolo, the lefty on the mound for the Phillies, who the Phillies notoriously struggle with left-handed pitchers. And how about this? A minus 116 favorite currently right now at the FanDuel Sportsbook. That's to the Cincinnati Reds, and a total of 8.5 across the board. Any thoughts today between the Phillies and the Reds? Turnbull versus Lodolo.
Yeah, I mean, look, having your lineup full of really good left-handed power hitters is such a monkey paw situation, because it means 70% of your games you've got the platoon advantage. You know, we're watching Schwarber and Harper hit dingers, and I know Harper is not in there right now, but then when you go up against a good lefty like Lodolo, who absolutely shoved in his most recent start, then you find yourself in between a rock and a hard place. I'm a big Lodolo guy, actually. Career 7% walk rate, career 30% K rate. He's a really good starting pitcher. I hate to do this to you. I tried to help you yesterday on the show. I've been rooting for the 76ers. I've been like, look, the 76ers, they're coming back. The Phillies, I don't think are going to get it done today. I'm off the Spencer Turnbull wagon. I think minus 118 here for the Reds is a little bit too light. I think we're like minus 130 range here for the Reds as a more appropriate price. So I'm taking the Reds and Nick Lodolo today.
Still chilly out there in Cincinnati, about 60 degrees at first pitch, wind blowing out to right field, about 9.5 miles an hour. We'll see if that makes a difference tonight. Let's go to the nation's capital, the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Washington Nationals. Knack versus Irvin on the mound today. Cooler conditions once again, slight winds blowing in, but a heavy favorite for the Dodgers as anticipated. This number actually opened up overnight at the FanDuel Sportsbook, Davis, minus 205. That's down a little bit to a number right now at minus 190 live, but a total up from 9 to 9.5. We're expecting runs here today between the Dodgers and the Nationals.
Yeah, because it's so funny. The Dodgers are supposed to have this great pitching. They are like the unluckiest team with starting pitching. Some of the guys they're rolling out this year for starting pitching, we've got Knack, we've got Gavin Stone, who can't get anyone out. Yamamoto has not been great, although his season-long numbers are a little bit skewed from that Korean series. It's not exactly lining up. I mean, come on. I'm never going to be betting the Nationals in this spot. I don't care if it's the right side. I don't care if I don't care if the charts and graphs bros are telling me that their model has the Nats as a good bet here. It's just like Ohtani, yeah, sure, you're winning, and then Ohtani hits a 500-foot dinger to end the game. Like their lineup is so crazy. There are no easy outs. I know that Lux and Outman and Taylor are playing poorly this season, but those are all guys who project as either average or above average major league players. I'm still on the Dodgers side here.
Yeah, a lot of table setters, a lot of killers in that lineup. They are really good. And yesterday, talking about the long ball for Ohtani, he did go yard yesterday. We'll see if he can make it another home run today if he is in that starting lineup. 3:45 p.m. Eastern, which means 12:45 Pacific. That's Manaea, the lefty, taking on Snell. That is the Mets and the San Francisco Giants. Minus 126 price overnight. That has increased slightly to a minus 130 favorite here for the home team, the Giants. A total that started at 7, Davis, now up to 7.5. Manaea, Snell, lefty versus lefty. What happens here?
I think what happens here is we see that Snell is still not quite right because he didn't get to ramp up. He didn't get to have his normal preseason, has not topped 5 strikeouts in any of his starts. He has not been able to get past 85 pitches in any of his starts. His swinging strike rate has been down. His ground balls are down relative to what you'd want. He gave up a ton of fly balls in his most recent game against Arizona. I'm kind of off the Snell train. I think he'll figure it out. I think he'll be fine. But I actually like the underdog New York Metropolitans here. And by the way, like Lindor's got to get a hit. I mean, what like the Lindor thing? We're a month long now into his swoon. I think he should figure it out.
Let's have a quick one here. 963, 964 in the rotation. 840 start tonight. San Diego and Colorado. Waldron versus my guy Ty Block, the lefty for Colorado. 11.5 is the total. Davis, 75 degrees out there in the Midwest in Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Rockies still can't score runs. They've got 9 runs in their last 6-game homestand, and by the way, they do still play at Coors Field. So yeah, I mean, look, I think you take the Padres here. It wouldn't really necessarily be on the over though.
By the way, humidors are for cigars, not for baseballs. Take the humidors out of baseball. Let's get those 13.5s and 14.5s out there in Colorado. That's what the people want to see. But you know what the people want to see in here? Boomer Esiason coming up next, dropping that knowledge from the NFL Draft. Quarterback edition coming up next.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
A popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
You're not going to get the Tiger Woods size audience. Because do you know where they went? They went to Caitlin Clark. That's where those people went.
What?
Those people are now going to the WNBA. Yeah. The fan that only watches what's hot, the fan, the casual who doesn't really like sports but likes to be involved in the in thing, they're
water
watching
cooler discussion.
They're watching Caitlin Clark.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
I mean, they're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
We are a day away from the NFL Draft, round number 1 in prime time. It's Davis Maddock, Donnie Rightside, and now we're going to bring on Boomer Esiason, the 1988 MVP of the NFL. We're ready to go this morning, Boomer. How do you feel getting so close to the draft here?
I always get excited for it, Donnie, and Davis, it's great to see you as well. I always get excited for it because there's a lot of unknown to every draft, and with as many quarterbacks as we have that we think are going to make it into the first round, I would say that this is going to be as exciting a draft as we've had in the last 4 or 5 years.
I'm so happy you're on with us here because the draft does start tomorrow. Now, much like most of the general population, we were never drafted into the NFL. Boomer, you were drafted in round number 2 in 1984. So my first question to you is going to be, we see everything out in the public now. Everything gets scrutinized. How was in the early 1980s going through that draft process for you before getting drafted in the NFL?
It wasn't a lot of fun. I actually got hurt in my last bowl game against Tennessee. Reggie White separated my left shoulder, which is obviously my throwing shoulder. So when I went to the combine, it was down in New Orleans at that time. And I actually threw at the combine. I don't know why I threw at the combine, but I was throwing it all over the place at the Superdome. It was not a great experience for me. And then we had another combine out in Seattle. I didn't have a great combine out there as well. And I think that year, the Cincinnati Bengals going into the draft had the number 1 overall pick. And I think they had settled on Steve Young to be their quarterback. But Steve signed with the USFL LA Express. I then held a press conference saying, I didn't grow up rooting for, the LA Express or the Memphis Showboats. I wanted to be an NFL quarterback just to make sure everybody in the NFL knew that I wasn't going to try to get them into a bidding war and hopefully be a top 10 pick. And as you pointed out, I fell to the second round. I was the first quarterback taken, and it was a very, very distressing day for me. The good news was that Mel Kiper was singing my praises on ESPN that day. However, I was not at the draft. I was at my dorm room at the University of Maryland, and two of my University of Maryland teammates, Ron Solt and Pete Koch, both got drafted before me, both got drafted in the first round, and they wouldn't start their press conference at the University of Maryland until I was drafted, which was right before noon on draft day. So the three of us had our press conference together, and then Pete and I ended up taking off for Cincinnati because he was drafted by the Bengals number 16 overall. Because the Bengals ended up trading the overall number 1 pick to the New England Patriots, they selected Irving Fryer because I guess they felt like I was not worthy of a number 1 pick, hence the reason why I lasted to number 38. And I'll never forget that phone call from Sam Weiss. She goes, "Hey, Boom, you want to be a Bengal?" I'm like, "What the F, man? I thought you guys forgot about me." So they got me with the 10th pick in the second round, and it was not a great memory, to say the least.
Well, if it is any consolation, I absolutely promise you, if we slotted Boomer Esiason into a modern NFL draft, the 2020s NFL draft, I promise you, maybe not the number 1 overall pick, but definitely a top 5 pick. Absolute guarantee. I suppose it depends on what you think about Caleb Williams, which is what I want to ask you about here. It feels like maybe about a month ago, there was sort of this popular thing of like, oh, you know, Caleb Williams, he was such a disaster those final 5 games at USC. He's crying on the sideline. Oh, he's kind of a weird guy. There was that weird quote that came out yesterday from the guy who was like, oh, he's like if Prince played quarterback. To be honest, I think if you just watch Caleb Williams play, I don't know how you can doubt this guy's ability to play the game at all. He's an incredible quarterback, Boomer.
I believe so. And as a matter of fact, when he transferred out of Oklahoma and he went to USC with Lincoln Riley, we knew 2 years ago that he would be this draft's number 1 overall pick. That's how good he was back then. And he's only gotten better and more matured. The only thing about these guys coming out nowadays, especially in Caleb's situation, is that they've made so much money already that they're a different breed of player than when we came out of college. So I don't know how that affects all these guys. I know that, he's all over Instagram and social media. We didn't have that to deal with back then either. So it's a whole nother set of circumstances that they're dealing with. But, I mean, you just watch the kid play. I'm not saying he's going to be Patrick Mahomes, but he has a lot of Patrick Mahomes type of football in him. And he's probably one guy that is not going to be intimidated at all when he gets to Chicago. And I got to give Ryan Poles a lot of credit. I think it was back in February, right around the Super Bowl, they were asking me about, drafting for the Chicago Bears. I'm like, if Ryan Poles doesn't draft Caleb Williams, he should be fired. This has been coming for 2 years. Whoever was going to have the number 1 pick in this draft was going to go with him, and I think he's a can't-miss player. And I think what Ryan Poles has done for the Bears, their organization, how they've rebuilt this team relatively quickly in the last 3 years, and then jettisoning, Justin Fields, tells you that this is the kid, and this is the kid that's going to hopefully lead the Bears and finally give the Bears a franchise quarterback for the first time in their history that would play more than, maybe like 3 or 4 seasons there and lead them to 1 Super Bowl. This kid has the potential to lead this team to many Super Bowls.
I love the Bears' direction, and you being a quarterback, you have to love the fact that you bring a young kid in. He's going to have a lot of weapons right off the bat here to try to succeed. But I'm going to make you a general manager right now, Boomer. Take a look at that number 2 pick. It's the Washington Commanders. We know they're going quarterback, but there's a lot of shroud of secrecy here. If you were the Commanders, which quarterback are you taking number 2 overall?
Well, the other guys I don't really know. I have met Jaden Daniels, and he brought the Heisman Trophy to the CBS NFL Today program. And I was nicely surprised at how, respectful he was to everybody, how he carried himself, how he reflected the University LSU that he's played for. The one thing that I worried about him was that he was really, really skinny. He reminded me of a really young Randall Cunningham back when Randall came out in 1985. That's like the body type that he has. He's like elastic. But I don't necessarily know, other than Caleb Williams, this guy is the most explosive athlete in this class. I hope that wherever he goes, if it is Washington, which I do believe it will be, that he doesn't have to play right away. I think this is a kid that just needs, a little bit of seasoning. Maybe, 5 or 6 games in, if the Commanders aren't doing well, then maybe they turn it over to him. I just hope that they don't throw him on the field immediately. I know they're going to see him in practice, and they're going to go, oh, my God, this kid has got a great arm. He's a tremendous athlete, but he needs to put on some more weight. Now, I saw where he just said he wants to gain more yards than Michael Vick and Lamar Jackson, and that's great if you want to do that, but that's also dangerous. And in order for him to do that and become the next Josh Allen, if you will, you're going to have to put on about 25 pounds.
Definitely possible. All right, talk to me about Drake May, because by my eyes, my estimation, he is the second best quarterback in this class, kind of overshadowed by how good Daniels was. I think it would be a mistake for the Commanders to pass over the 21-year-old Drake May. And two, what do you see from him when you watch that makes you feel that I'm either right or wrong about May?
Well, I'm not saying, even if he's drafted in the top 5, I mean, it's a win for him. I mean, that just tells you what everybody thinks of him. So whether he's 2, whether he's 3, like C.J. Stroud won second last year, and it was like some sort of insult. I mean, being insulted is being drafted number 38 in the second round. That's an insult when you think you're a top 10 pick. So I think there's a fine line of what kind of offense you're running. Where do you think these players are coming from? In terms of, their development in college. Drake looks like your quintessential big, strong pocket passer that can run if he has to, but doesn't want to. He doesn't make a lot of secondary plays like the previous 2 quarterbacks that we were just talking about. So could I see him being traded? This is interesting. Could the Patriots end up trading with the Giants? Let's say the Patriots want J.J. McCarthy. And let's say they want to take a risk and trade with the Giants back to number 6 so the Giants can take Drake May, because that's all the rumors around here in New York. If that does happen, then all of a sudden it really gets interesting. So I think this is where the draft is going to get interesting. 3, 4, 5, and 6. Let's see what happens on Thursday or leading up into Thursday, whether or not one of these teams make a big trade.
Former NFL MVP quarterback Boomer Esiason breaking down the draft. Boomer, thanks so much for joining us here on a Wednesday morning.
Always my pleasure, guys. Have a great day, all right?
Fantastic stuff across the board. The draft is tomorrow night. The SportsGrid Network has you covered. Basketball is up next.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
You're not going to get the Tiger Woods size audience, because you know where they went? They went to Caitlin Clark. That's where those people went.
What?
Those people are now going to the WNBA. Yeah, the fan that only watches what's hot, the casual who doesn't really like sports but likes to be involved in the in thing. They're watching
cooler discussion.
They're watching Caitlin Clark.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
I mean, they're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Boy, you like guests, we got them. We hit every single angle today. Professional quarterbacks, insiders, you name it. We have you covered right here on the SportsGrid Network, which does include tomorrow night's NFL Draft coverage right here on the network. Live, don't you miss out all night long. Get the best coverage of the NFL Draft. It's on the grid. It's the only place to be at that point. But we got bigger fish to fry today, Davis, because we're going to take a look at the NBA. Now, we're used to getting triple headers and quadruple headers. We're going to be focused on 2 games tonight. One at 7 p.m. Eastern and one at 9:30. Let's start in the first game here. 5:17, 5:18 on the rotation. The Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics live from the TD Bank Garden. This line initially opened up after game number 1 ended at 15.5 as a favorite towards the Boston Celtics. We're now checking in at a number at 14.5. The total, 206.5 at the opening number. 204 now as it sits. So let's just start here. The anticipation of this being a series, Davis, which means going at least 5 or 6 games, for me is quite low. But I might determine that factor if we actually make it back to Boston on a game tonight if the Miami Heat can be competitive. So my question to you is, will the Heat be competitive tonight in Boston?
I really don't think so. I mean, I just don't see their path to being competitive. I suppose Bam Adebayo could have an out-of-body experience. Maybe Tyler Hero makes a bunch of threes. Maybe we're able to get Terry Rozier back in this game, and that balances things out a little bit. But the fact is, the Heat, without Jimmy Butler, are a team without an offensive star. Bam is a star and a very good offensive player, but most of his value comes on the defensive end. The issue is, the Celtics don't even really try and score around the rim that much. They're a team that absolutely jacks up 3-pointers. And when you have, Tyler Hero trying to run around screens and you've got Jaime Jaquez and Duncan Robinson trying to guard Jason Tatum, it's just not going to work. I do think Eric Spoelstra is a better coach than Joe Mazzulla. If we switched roles, I think that would be sort of interesting. But when you get a double-digit point spread in an NBA playoff game, and not only double digits, not 10.5, 14.5. And it could even move by the time this starts. If you told me this closed at 16.5, like a December game between, the Denver Nuggets and the Washington Wizards, I really would not be all that surprised. Like, this Heat roster, they are just down bad, Donnie. There's just really no way around it.
It's a shame, too, because we were lining up for, Jimmy Butler and a healthy Miami Heat to say, we don't give a damn about the Celtics here. Like, we're going to Boston to win. We proved we can do that in the past, and we're not afraid of anybody regardless of what our actual seeding is. Jimmy Butler gets injured in that play-in game against the Philadelphia 76ers. We don't know when he's coming back, but certainly probably not in enough time to save this series, which means the Miami Heat will be in the offseason. If we take a look at some of the player points props here at the FanDuel Sportsbook in this game, Jason Tatum, 25.5, Jaylen Brown, 20.5, Kristaps Porzingis, 17.5. And you might even be saying, boy, those seem kind of low here. Well, the total is kind of low because the offense we're worried about, not necessarily the Boston Celtics, it's the Miami Heat and the tempo that they have to play at to win. We take a look at Bam Adebayo, 18.5 points in this game. Caleb Martin, 17.5. Tyler Hero coming in as the top dog in the total poll here at 20.5. If you are this, forget about winning this game. For the Miami Heat, Davis, what do we need to do as a Heat team to stay around where, A, it's not a blowout, and B, we can watch some fourth quarter basketball?
I hope we get to watch some fourth quarter basketball. I think it would be, actually, it would probably be good for the Boston Celtics to play some real competitive games before they have to play against the Knicks, the Bucks, before, maybe they just totally run roughshod over the Eastern Conference and they get to the actual NBA Finals against the Denver Nuggets, and they're like, wait, what do you mean this other team is ahead? It's the third quarter, and the other team actually has more points than us. And I also think the Celtics are probably one of those teams that is a little bit more damaged by the change in refereeing, where, kind of the platonic ideal of an NBA score is 101 to 99. That's just kind of the perfect basketball game, just kind of makes sense. There's some real jeopardy. Ethan Sherwood-Strauss made this point, which I think is pretty accurate, which is if you're watching a 134-128 game, and every trip down the floor is just a three-pointer, the jeopardy doesn't feel that high. But when you're watching a 78-75 game, every three-pointer feels a little bit risky, right? You're watching your team, you're like, God, I wish they would just go get to the basket. All of this is a long way of saying, I don't think I'd be betting very many Miami Heat overs. And I don't know if I'd be betting a ton of Celtics overs either, because these numbers are predicated on minutes played. And Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown might just not come in the fourth quarter. Kristaps Porzingis might not play his fourth quarter rotation. We might be treated to the Peyton Pritchard, O'Shea Brissett pick and roll for a lot of the fourth quarter. Games like this where it's like you have motivation questions, you've got minutes questions. Rozier, I just saw, is not going to play. Josh Richardson out for the season. Jimmy Butler not going to play. Like, they're just too thin to hang.
And also, it says Luke Cornett downgraded to out on Wednesday. Tough scene for the Boston Celtics, as they could have used Luke Cornett. Now, I'm being pretty facetious at this point. But if we're lining up this game, too, ask me this as a handicapper looking at games like this, because everybody coming into it, and like myself, 14.5, 15.5 point numbers. We expect the Miami Heat to lose this basketball game. But as a Heat organization, we've seen them shock before. Down and out, no starters in the lineup, winning games they're not supposed to. Can you rest your hat and just say, I think Spoelstra's going to come up with something different than what we saw in game number 1 that might be able to give the Celtics a little bit of problems, Davis, in game number 2?
I mean, look, is anything possible? If I had to take one coach to get a game off of this, would I take Eric Spoelstra?
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah, probably I would. It feels to me, though, it's more likely to come in game 3 than game 2, though. You get there, you get back to Miami. Maybe you've got Rozier for that game. I don't know. Maybe Tyler Hero needs to get a good night's sleep in his own bed or whatever. But I don't think it's coming here. I think it is going to be much more likely to come in game 3. 14.5 is just the math behind winning. You know what? I'd rather take the Heat money line than take them plus 14.5, honestly. I really would.
Yeah, it's one of those games where, look, we're going to watch because it's only a double header, but it's always interesting. We talk about, spreads yesterday, everyone being close, and we're anticipating a lot of good matchups in a triple header. Tonight, we get the double header, and it could be the double blowouts here, meaning with the Miami Heat getting those 14.5 points. Now, final segment of the show, we got a lot to go over. We'll cover a little bit of NHL action, but also we're going to get to that game between the New Orleans Pelicans and the Oklahoma City Thunder. You hear Zion talk behind the scenes. Hey, man, if we keep winning or play well, I'm looking forward to coming back here from this hamstring injury. We'll find out certainly if that comes to fruition. But if you are the Pelicans, you don't want to go down 0-2. Let's find out if they will be 0-2 in the next segment here. Stick around. Here is XM Channel 159. It's the early line in the morning.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
You're not going to get the Tiger Woods size audience. Because you know where they went? They went to Caitlin Clark. That's where those people went.
What?
Those people are now going to the WNBA. Yeah. The fan that only watches what's hot, the fan, the casual who doesn't really like sports but likes to be involved in the in thing, they're watching
cooler discussion.
They're watching Caitlin Clark.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
I mean, they're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Final segment here of the early line for a Wednesday morning edition. And my goodness, 3 hours travels quickly here. Big topics. You know it. It's Davis and Donnie. Pelicans and the Thunder here. 7.5 point spread. OKC is a favorite at home as the number 1 overall seed in the Western Conference. The Pels getting the 7.5 points and a 212 posted total here. Now, I know Davis is a big fan of OKC, but the question is, can OKC get the cover here in this game?
Yeah, look, they're going to win. They're going to cover. They got their nervousness. They got their jitters out of the way in game 1. Smooth sailing the rest of the way. We're going to see a clean sweep. The Pelicans locker room, they're going down. The Thunder, they're coming up. Lou Dort, Jalen Williams. Lou Dort over 2.5 threes. How about you add that one in there in this game? I think we see a big Oklahoma City Thunder win.
Let's see some player points in this game. CJ McCollum, 20.5. Ingram, 19.5. Looks like the top dog, obviously SGA, customized here at 29.5 at a plus 100 price here at the FanDuel Sportsbook. So interesting stuff going on there in the NBA tonight. We'll watch that all play out. And also the NHL, 3 games on the docket tonight. Boston, Toronto, Vegas, and Dallas. Looks like Los Angeles taking on Edmonton. Now, sometimes we need a little bit of help here on our hockey segments. Best bets here. That's what we like to give out on our final segment of the day on the early line. And let's bring in our intern extraordinaire, his last day, which we got to give him some airtime and some love. It's Jason White. Jason, come on now. What would you wait so long for getting on the air with us, man?
Well, guys, thank you for having me on today. And if you've watched any of the action the other night with Edmonton and Los Angeles, it was a high-scoring affair. Tonight, the puck line at 5.5 goals. We're going to take over, and we're going to take the Oilers. I think the Oilers will handle business. They know how to light the lamp. The Kings not afraid to score as well. So we put that in a little parlay. You don't even need to worry about the Oilers covering. All they got to do is win.
There you go. Edmonton there from Jason. Now, by the way, Davis, like you talk about like Midwest accents here. Like Jason and I locate on the East Coast. Similar area here. How do you appreciate the accent coming in here? Quite strong, and I love it.
I'm loving it, man. That is a great part of it. I got the Midwestern accent thing going on. You could tell where I was born. You could tell where I'm from. So I love coming on the grid and getting these beautiful Northeastern accents.
Now, also, let me get this out of the way, Jason. Yeah, absolutely. We keep it real. Now, let's really keep it real. Now, there's some guys behind the scenes here as you were an intern with us doing great work. If you want to air out any of those grievances here, or who got on your nerves on a day-to-day basis, or the best host that you've ever worked with here, let me know now. This is your time.
Well, I would say, coming in during the tail end of football season, we caught a lot of flack with our birds. But, I think I got to give the Philly bias to you, Donnie. I think you are the best talent that I've been able to work with here. Don't tell Ben. You're the one that's been on the air the most, too. So, haven't missed a whole lot of time. I got to give you the credit there.
Look at that. Like Davis. I mean, see, this is how you do it. You come on the show, you talk nice to the host here. It's the way you're supposed to do business here. Now, that lets me know that Jason going to be very successful in his future endeavors here, no doubt about it. So how do you feel like I could be the best host here at the SportsGrid Network, Davis? I mean, come on now. It feels good, right? You vote that way.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Anytime I come on the early line filling in for BSS, who doesn't ever want to hang out with me, it's always me filling in with you, Donnie. I get to see Ben like twice a year. I get to hear that deep, rich, beautiful baritone only so often. And so I think you deservedly have earned the award of at least the most consistent host here on the early line.
There we go. So Jason giving out a best bet tonight in the NHL. Now I got a question, because obviously being from that Philadelphia metro area, the Philadelphia 76ers down 0-2 to the Knicks, Jason. How do you feel about game number 3? What's going to happen there? Can the Sixers pull this series out in your mind?
So I think that they will win game 3. I think that it's going to be rocking at Wells Fargo Center. But I do hate to say it. I grew up watching those Villanova Wildcats, and they are all over that New York Knicks squad. I think that it's just a little too much firepower. And Embiid, he's just playing with one leg right now. It's really tough to watch. Maybe next year he'll be back better and healthier, but I still think the Knicks are going to take it ultimately.
There you go. Might have to have you back on here as a special guest if the Sixers do make a run towards those NBA Finals, which I'm certainly hoping for. Davis hoping that his OKC Thunder make a run there. Maybe it'll be a magical final between OKC and the Philadelphia 76ers. But Jason, fantastic work being here at the Sports Grid Network. We thank you for your efforts, and also hopefully we cash in on a best bet tonight for you in that Edmonton Oilers game. Anything you want to say to let the people go here?
Hey, thank you for the time, Sports Grid. And if you're not on the grid, what are you doing? Stay locked in.
There you go. Look at that. The guy can host it all. By the way, tomorrow's Thursday. Ben's coming back. I think I might have a day off here. Jason can take my role here. Thanks, Jason. Enjoy. And again, another episode in the can for the early line. We'll be back tomorrow. It's draft day, people, right here on the Sports Grid Network.